All right, now the Zoom meeting is officially started. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. My name is Paige Scheid, and I am the City of Shoreline's Sustainability Manager. Can you all hear me okay here? Awesome. Just let me know if the mics become an issue. We can sort that out. I'm here today with Cascade Bicycle Club to talk about biking safety, the City of Shoreline's climate action goals, and other fun things that have to do with biking. So I'm going to take us through just a couple housekeeping items and through the agenda. Oh no. Oh. Let's see if I can get this to work.
And then you want to assist?
Yes. Okay, great. Item will help me for the beginning and we'll make sure it works by the time you get back up here. Okay, so for those in person, I wanted to share some housekeeping items. We have restrooms on the first floor, just out and around the corner. We have a water bottle refill station over there as well. Please help yourself to snacks and to waters and coffees that we have here. As you have questions that come up, we'll have the microphones. We'll be able to pass them around the room, so please don't be shy. Raise your hand during the presentation if you have a question. For folks online, please, we encourage you to use the Q&A chat function to post any of your questions. We'll be pausing throughout the presentation to address those, so please put them in the chat and we'll get to them as soon as we can. We'll go over the City of Shoreline's Climate Action Plan goals. At the very beginning, it will talk very briefly about Pedal Forward Shoreline. I know some of you are here to hear more about that program. And then I'm basically going to turn it over to Amy at Cascade Bicycle Club to talk more about bike safety and biking infrastructure. But before I do that, I'll just have Amy briefly introduce herself.
Hi. Hi, I'm Amy. My pronouns are she, her, and as Paige mentioned, I'm with Cascade Bicycle Club. I've been an instructor for, I think, about 7 years, and I've been biking in Seattle for around 10, and have taught, I think, around 400 people how to either ride a bike or how to commute safely in Seattle, so in Seattle and beyond. So I'm excited to share more with you today.
Thanks, Amy. Next slide. All right, so I'll try and breeze through some of the more informative slides here, but I wanted to share a little bit about why we are hosting a class like this right now. Let me just close the doors really quick. Come on in. So I manage the City of Shoreline sustainability programs, which means I manage our city's climate action plan implementation. That's okay. We have some goals at the City of Shoreline to reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that the city produces. And one of the main ways that we can do that is to reduce the amount of driving in Shoreline, alongside other goals in the climate action plan, like to increase ecosystem health and to increase resilience to communities who are facing impacts from climate change. Next slide. If you haven't seen us talk about our really awesome pie chart here, this might be the first time you're seeing this, but we did a greenhouse gas inventory in 2019 that showed over 55% of all of our emissions in Shoreline come from transportation. And 44% of those emissions come from just driving gasoline-powered cars. So one of the biggest things we can do in Shoreline to reduce our emissions is to get people out of their cars and to use bikes or other pedestrian walkways in Shoreline to get around our city safely. The other big portion has to do with energy, but we're not going to talk about that today. Next slide. I mentioned this a few times, but we are focused really on getting folks out of their cars in Shoreline and to safely using other modes of transportation. So one of the biggest things we're focusing on is to reduce the amount of community-wide driving. And so in our climate action plan, we're looking at ways to get folks out of their cars. And one of those ways is to incentivize biking, but through e-bike purchases or rebates. So that's where Pedal Forward, which we'll talk about shortly, comes from. Next slide. So many of you have heard about our Pedal Forward Shoreline program. This program is grant funded from the state of Washington through the Department of Ecology. The city received a Air Quality in Overburdened Communities grant in late 2024, and we began implementing that grant as soon as we could in early 2025 because we have to spend all the funding by June 30th. The funding comes from the Climate Commitment Act through the state of Washington. So Pedal Forward Shoreline and all the bike purchases and today's programming is because of the funding from the Climate Commitment Act. Next slide. So the state of Washington, Department of Ecology, looked at all areas across Washington state and identified 16 areas that were considered overburdened and underserved alongside with increasing problems with air pollution. And the city of Shoreline has a small section of the city that's connected to North Seattle that qualified for this grant. Next slide. Up on the screen here, you'll see that the area that's defined in Shoreline is a pretty simple square. That's a census tract, but it goes all the way into North Seattle. And so what the program we're focusing on today really has to do with that area in Shoreline. We're trying to reduce the amount of driving in that area specifically and get folks out of their cars. Next slide. And an even more zoomed in photo here will show you that the area that is impacted by the grant and eligible for pedal forward shoreline is parts of Ridgecrest and parts of Briarcrest. So it kind of splits both of the neighborhoods in half. And so if you were selected as one of the recipients of an e-bike today, you have to live in one of these areas. Next slide. So we're not going to talk a ton about pedal forward shoreline today because really today we're focusing on bicycle safety, how to get on and off the light rail, bicycle infrastructure. But if you're here to learn more about pedal forward shoreline, I wanted to highlight what the program is all about. So it's about teaching folks how to ride their bikes safely and getting electric bikes into the hands of folks who live in that identified census tract. So our goal is to give out 100 or more bikes to those residents who live there in that census tract. Next slide. And it's also to teach the community about safe bicycle practices. So that's what today is all about as well. So you're here kind of benefiting from a part of Pedal Forward Shoreline, which is to learn more about e-bikes and e-bike safety, how to get around safely, and to learn from some experts like Amy. And now I am done talking at you, so I'll turn it over to Amy and see if I can get the slide clicker to work.
Hi, welcome. So glad you're here today. We're going to see about this slide a minute. Perfect. So today in this course, we're going to talk all about these 5 things. And in between each of these categories, I'm going to take a pause and make sure that we address any questions. So if you have a question about a category, hold on to it. You will have a time. And then at the end, we'll have a time for more questions. So the categories are first, how to correctly fit a bike and helmet. Then the big differences between electric bikes and non-electric bikes. We're not going to talk about the mechanics so much, but the handling of them. If you grew up riding bikes as a kid, how might this be a little different? 3, how to plan your bike route and a bit of knowledge of bike infrastructure. How to use your bike on the light rail. I do that often. It is very convenient, but it can be intimidating at first. So we'll talk through that. And then my favorite part, how to use safe riding techniques when you're out on the road. And a lot of these things we're going to cover today are both for e-bikes and non-e-bikes. The way you handle, the way you interact with traffic is going to be very similar. So this can be applicable whether you're getting a bike through this, a different e-bike, or a non-e-bike. So does that sound good to everybody? Yeah? Ready to roll? Okay. Clicker is not working. Thank you. So let's just talk about basic helmet fit. First thing, give me a sec. I'll get used to this. Okay, the first thing to know about helmets is that they do actually expire. After 3 to 5 years, you do want to replace your helmet because as you notice, the inside of this, it's basically a type of styrofoam or a styrofoam something similar to it. So over time, it does degrade a little bit. And if you are ever in a collision where your helmet cracks or your head hits the ground, you want to get rid of that helmet. It is a single-use thing. So all helmets also have a manufacture date on a sticker inside. If it is too old that you do not see the manufacture date, it is a sign you should get rid of your helmet. That said, we are giving helmets away with the Pedal Forward program, and helmets don't have to be an expensive thing. There are very safe helmets that you can get for $10 through Cascade, or through other programs. It just increases as the price increases, just fit, style, et cetera, goes up, but they're still all safe. So basic fit, you want to make sure to get a helmet that the smallest helmet that still fits on your head, nice and low. Then once it is nice and low, we use what we call the 2-2-2 check. 2 fingers between your eyebrows and your helmet, so it's not back here. Once it's nice and low, you tighten it up in the back. Then 2 fingers on the side of your ear, so the clasps come right below your ear. That will help keep your helmet centered and nice and low. And the last 2 fingers are underneath your chin. Your helmet does not have to be tighter than that. In fact, if you've connected your helmet and tightened it with the back band, that's really what's holding it on. The clasp is just an extra. Does that make sense for basic helmet fit? Great, excellent. Next slide, please. Great. So there are so many different types of e-bikes, as there's so many different types of bikes. The biggest thing you want to consider when getting any type of bike is what type of riding are you doing, and does it further you in that type of riding? And is it the correct size, and does it fit well? So these are all just some examples of the wide range of e-bikes on the market. Next slide. And these are specifically through Pedal Forward program. I have one of the bikes here. I rode it here. It is very fun to ride. And there's 3 different styles. And they are quite similar in some ways, different in small ways. But let's talk about general bike fit a moment. So this applies for e-bikes and non-e-bikes. Next slide. So the first thing you want to consider is the frame size. So on step-through bikes like this that have a low frame, you won't be able to tell this as easily, but you see in the picture that when you step over the bike, you want to make sure there's enough space for you to get off the seat and not hit your body on the bike. So in that example, they want to be able to step off without hitting themselves. So that's a big, important part of the correct frame size. The next is the reach. So pretending I'm on the saddle here. You don't want your arms to have to be so far away to get to the handles. So if I'm having to really stretch my arms and my shoulders, that's just going to be hard on your shoulders, hard on your wrists. You might experience numbness, some pain in it. You want the handlebars to be a bit closer, so you have some bend in your elbows. And the last thing is the seat height. So you'll notice this saddle is high enough for me on this bike, and it is about even with my hips. When I'm on the bike, I cannot get my feet flat on the ground, and that's okay. As you get used to a new bike, it may be a little intimidating to have your seat up that high, so just start with it lower, and eventually you want it to get to a height that, as you can see from the photo, your foot that is closest to the ground, your leg is almost straight, but not locked out. The reason that you do this is otherwise when you're riding, your knees are like all the way up by your chin. It is not good for your knees. It's just uncomfy. And you're getting a more efficient pedal stroke when you have your legs lower. But again, you can work up to that height with your saddle, and we'll talk through techniques with this, but eventually that's where you want to be. Perfect, thank you. So those are the basic bike fit parts of this. Some other adjustability things that you can know for the future. The handlebars on the turn bikes especially are very adjustable back and forth. Same with the saddle, you can move it closer this way or a little bit back that way. And if you're experiencing other issues with your bike, like what I mentioned of hand numbness, some saddle issues, those are all things that you can change either by changing out your handlebars, by changing out a saddle, you can change out pedals, etc. They are very adjustable. It is not, here's your bike, don't do anything to it. It is your bike. So make sure it can fit your body. The best way you can do that if you're having issues is first, take it into a bike shop and ask them some questions about what you can even change. And if you're still experiencing issues, a lot of different health insurance does cover a bike fit by a physical therapist. So if it's constantly wrist issues, neck issues, etc., take it into a PT. So that's it as far as bike fit and helmet fit. Do we have any questions about that section? Yeah.
Station, the height of the saddle. I experienced long ago that I brought it too high that my knee lock on the way up. So that's something I needed to point out.
Thank you for that. So you had your saddle so high that you were kind of locking your knee when you were riding. Great. Thank you for mentioning that. So yeah, make sure you can get it all the way down, but that it doesn't have to go so far, because then you'll also experiencing your hips moving back and forth too much if you try and reach. So thank you. Any other questions about bike fit or helmet fit? Do we have any in the chat either?
We do not have any in the chat about fit right now.
I'm very good at explaining, so. Great. So let's move on then to the big differences in handling between electric bikes and non-electric bikes. Sometimes I say electric and acoustic bikes because it's just easier to say that way, like guitars. So the big differences that I want us to think about when it comes to handling specifically, and tell me too if I'm talking too fast. Great, thank you. The big differences in handling is that e-bikes are generally much heavier and they can be much faster. This makes such a difference in handling for a couple of reasons. When they're heavy, when you're going slow, they're going to be much more difficult to balance. So thinking about especially starting and stopping. Thinking about starting when you're going up a hill with a heavy bike, you want to make sure your stopping and starting is very consistent when you're dealing with something so heavy. Also, when you're making turns, when you're on an e-bike or something that's heavy, you can't make them as quickly because you're quite a heavy object. Think about it of turning a paddleboard versus turning a tanker. They're not nearly as nimble. Thinking about speed as well. With acoustic bikes, if you're able to get up to consistently 20 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour, you've usually built up the skills of bike handling to get to that point. But if you hop on an e-bike, you can go 20 automatically without necessarily having the skills to handle that bike. So the combination of those two, it being very heavy and quite fast, can lead you to a lot more dangerous situations. E-bikes are such an incredible tool, and I don't want to say this to frighten anybody, but it is a tool and it is a machine. So we need to be able to use it safely and effectively and treat it with respect. Something as well to note about e-bike crashes when they do occur is that there's not a lot of data about this so far, but the data that has come out kind of points to those crashes looking more like motorcycle crashes than they do like bicycle crashes because of the speed, because it's heavy. So, and think about, and we're going to talk about this as far as safe riding techniques. Think about riding like you're a motorcyclist or like a driver and not like you're tootling around on a bike. So that's some of the potential handling differences. Also, another thing, because it's fast and heavy, is that it takes much longer to brake on an e-bike than you think it is going to. So that's another consideration. That's just an intro to the handling differences. Any questions about that?
Nothing online.
Yes. No, you're fine. Love questions.
So one of my main purposes on trying to get one e-bike is to take the light rail down to downtown and go uphill and to Cherry Hill. And how difficult that could be on a slippery road, I guess.
So you're talking on a slippery road, just how difficult it might be to handle it, like if it's raining or such. As long as you're using safe practices and as long as you're recognizing that this is a heavy bike, and whether you're riding an acoustic bike or e-bike, you always just need to ride it within control. So sometimes that means going 5 miles an hour. Sometimes that can mean going 20, but always know that you can handle your bike. And for example, when we're talking about multi-use trails with a lot of different people on them, all riding different speeds, you just need to go slow sometimes. So you know that you can react to either other pedestrians, drivers, etc. So just riding within the speed that you can be confident in and safe in. Vicky?
I would add, I have this exact bike. It's like driving, right? Like if you're driving in the rain, then you know that your stopping distance is going to be longer. And so I just think about like how would I change my riding behavior in different weather for driving and applying that to biking.
Great. Great. Thank you. We have a mic for you.
Yeah, when you're riding a bike sometimes and you put on the brakes too quickly, it can give you a jolt like this. Is there any safety mechanism on the e-bikes to make sure you don't have that jolt if you hit the brakes too hard?
That's a good question. So we're talking about, is there any safety mechanisms to make sure that the back of your bike doesn't come up so you don't go head over handlebars? Good question. Partially, it's just learning effective braking techniques. So I grew up biking, and a lot of kids who did went head over handlebars at some point, just because we didn't know how to brake yet. So if you're just using your left brake, locking that up, which is your front brake, that's where you can get into issues. Thankfully, one consideration is e-bikes are so heavy that the back isn't going to come up anytime soon. But if we're using both of our brakes to stop, and this is something that we will work on if you're taking an on-bike class of how to brake effectively, then that shouldn't be an issue of if we're using both hands and also giving ourselves enough time to effectively stop. Does that answer your question? Great, thank you. Yeah, I got this.
Testing. All right. Quick question. So I know there's different types of bikes, and does the brake is it a different type of brake that I can use? Because I know I have an old bike and usually the brake doesn't work, and it's just because the brake is really old and all that. So my question is, does that brake different than a original brake from a bike?
So good question are brakes on many e-bikes different from brakes on many other bikes or acoustic bikes? There's two main types of brakes, rim brakes and disc brakes. And many bikes now have disc brakes. So that means you can't see it very well, but there's a rotor here that the brake pad clamps onto instead of clamping onto the rim of your bike, which generally is a more effective stopping method. So a lot of bikes are moving towards this, that they're using disc brakes instead, which have been seen to be more effective. They're also keeping it away from the water and grime on the road. But with any bike, you do need to make sure that you get them adjusted and tuned. No matter how great your brakes are, they just wear out over time on old bikes, new bikes, etc. So just make sure to get it adjusted consistently, especially in wet weather. And you should have good braking. If your braking ever starts to go out, go get it checked up.
We have some questions online that have to do with riding bikes in traffic. Should we hold off on answering those now and get
Let's
them
hold
later?
off on that. Yeah.
Okay, we'll get to those questions in the next section or two.
Perfect. Great. Any other questions about e-bikes or about the differences between e-bikes and acoustic?
I have a question that how long do I have to charge? It will show the fully charged, and how long it hold like once I charge completely, how long this e-bike will hold, like how long I can run for that before I charge again?
That's a great question. I'm going to give a short answer and then we'll follow up at the end if we have time. But it depends on the e-bike. I usually charge mine for a couple hours or overnight, depending on how much I've used it. And the battery range varies vastly between bikes and how you're using it. So this kind of answer.
How long does it last, the battery life?
It varies so much.
So it varies so much. So if I was like riding the bike from, let's say, Lake City over there, how long would it take?
Sorry.
Like, when you're riding the bike from one distance to another. So like, let's say I'm going to the gas station, right? I go from there and back. So it would be like, what, an hour or more? So it would last a little bit longer or no?
It totally depends how much e-assist you're using when you ride. So it totally depends, and it depends on the type of bike. But I'll answer more specific questions about batteries if we have time at the end. Do we have any more questions specifically about the differences between acoustic bikes and electric bikes in the handling? Great. Let's move on to talk a little bit about bike infrastructure. So I'm going to give you the specific terms for some bike infrastructure just for the knowledge of it, and then we'll talk about finding your route. So I have a picture here of the Burt Gilman Trail. I also took the Interurban North up here. Both of them are multi-use trails, which means they're for everybody. Means e-bikes, other rollers like rollerblades, wheelchair users, toddlers, groups of teens, everyone. So, and something important to mention about them is in that situation, e-bikes are the fast, heavy object of the trail. They are the tanker of the trail. So it's an e-bike rider's job to go at a safe speed and keep everyone safe. There is usually a speed limit on multi-use trails of 15 miles an hour. Sometimes, as I mentioned before, you can only go 5 miles an hour to keep everyone safe. Sometimes I've absolutely gone over 15 when no one is there. There's no one coming in off the trail. So just mark it for how safe you can go to keep, or how fast you can go while still keeping everyone safe. So multi-use trail. There are a couple differences between these different bike lanes. On the far left, a bike lane has a delineated paint strip, and you see it has an arrow with the bike. The buffered bike lane is still just paint delineating that between the general traffic lane, but it has a little bit of a buffer. It's a little bit expanded. And you see on the far right, it's protected when there's an actual physical barrier between you and the general traffic lane. So that could be a concrete barrier, plastic poles, some physical object. And on the far right, you see as well that it's a two-way lane. Something important to note too with those arrows is that they're there for a purpose. That is the direction that you should be traveling in. I have seen bikers using them going either direction. Pretty unsafe in the way that drivers are only looking for you to come from one direction. So make sure you are following the direction of the arrows. So on the right side, you'll see that there's a green strip in the middle of that bike lane. Does anyone know what that is? Why is that there?
Where people on bikes can stop?
Good guess. It's a good guess. Any other guesses?
Cars might intersect.
You got it. Nice. So that is an area, it's called a mixing zone. Good answer. And so it shows, as you see here, a vehicle that wants to turn right will be crossing over the bike lane in that green area. So it is a mixing zone. So it's just adding visibility to an area that both drivers and bikes may be. And on the far right, this is called a share row. It's not technically a bike lane because there's no white strip delineating it, And you'll often see it in the middle or close to the middle right side of a road, just indicating that, hey, there might be a higher presence of bike riders here. Good, good, good. As far as all that terminology I just went through, that all making sense? Good. Seeing some nods, great. As far as planning a route, there's a couple different options. City of Seattle has some great bike maps, and I was just checking online, and City of Shoreline also online has some bike maps that you can look at online. One way that I honestly use route planning a lot is just through Google Maps. I found it to be very effective, and that's how I do most of my route planning. Some other folks use more specific bike apps like Strava. There's a couple others. I honestly haven't gotten into that much just with general commuting, but I'd say as a first initial way to get into it, looking at online bike maps or something like Google Maps is a great tool to start with. So going to the next slide, this is a route, this is just a screenshot from me looking at how to get from Sky Nursery down to the light rail on 148th. So a couple things to notice here. On the left side, you can see the, what is it called? Just the height. Oh, the elevation, thank you. The height of the world. The elevation gain or going down. And so I found that very helpful because every single time I think I know a better way to get there and I choose it on the map, it's this. So Google Maps often knows better than me, but it's helpful for that to be reassured. Another thing that you'll notice here is the green strips on different streets, and that is the bike infrastructure. So you can bring that up on Google Maps by looking in the far right-hand corner and clicking on that because it will give you satellite view, etc., street view, and you can click bike infrastructure. So if you're just curious and want to see what's up, you can always just check around to find that bike infrastructure. And I forgot to mention that on the left side as well, you just toggle to the right to find that biking icon to find the bike route. Does that make sense as far as the initial bike route planning? And once you start riding more, you'll get an idea of what's in your area that feels best to you. So there might be areas with bike lanes that you think, I actually like this side street a lot better. And that's great. But as a first initial we're going out, this is a great way to start learning about it. Any questions about general route planning?
Is it okay to ride on the sidewalk if the road is particularly busy?
That is a great question that we're going to cover soon. Any other questions?
In the past, when my bicycle was working, I would get off the street onto the sidewalk anytime there was traffic, like when I going up and down Meridian or something like that. And when there's no traffic or a few, lighter traffic, I'm back on the road again. But yeah, when I'm on the road, my flasher is on as well. When I'm on the sidewalk, regular light.
That's a good question. We'll cover sidewalks in just a little bit. Short answer, yes, technically it is allowed, but there are a lot of reasons why it's not often the safest place. Vicki.
I have a question, Amy. What should I do if I use Google Maps and I'm on my route and I'm just like, I don't feel good about, I just don't feel comfortable. What would you advise me to do?
That's a good question. So, and that is partially, you have a lot of different ways to handle this. And all of us will sometime be in a circumstance where we're in a traffic situation that we don't care for. So you do have the option to go walk on the sidewalk. You also usually have an option to find a slower side street. And I'm going to show you in the bike handling section kind of what to do in those scenarios, so you know even how to get through this road before you turn off. But in general, if you find yourself in a scary situation or on a high traffic road, just stay calm, act predictably, get off to the side of the road, maybe take a breather, take a breath, just find somewhere to take a pause, to keep yourself from getting so highly anxious about it. Just stop, take a pause, take a breath before you figure out what your next move is. Great, thank you. Any other questions about route finding? Great, let's move on. Light rail, part of route finding. And I had, as you had seen, that I went to the light rail in this last map. I use the light rail often with my bike, both with an electric bike and acoustic bike. I love it, so I'm very excited about sharing this. So the two sections that I'm going to cover is taking your bike on and off the light rail and locking your bike at the station. So could I get a quick show of hands who has ridden on the light rail just as a passenger? Great, okay. Perfect. So I'm not going to cover buying a ticket or getting an ORCA card because there's a lot of great resources online to find that. Super simple to use. We're going to assume you know how to purchase a ticket or how to use an ORCA card for your ticket and move from there. So taking your bike on the light rail, super simple. You do not have to pay any more to take a bike on the light rail, just as if you're going to the airport with your luggage. It's just something you got to take with you. So at every station, there are elevators to get to the platform. You do not have to worry about taking this on any stairs or any escalators. In fact, you should not. So use the elevator to get up to the platform. You can roll your bike onto any car. All the cars are connectable. In every car train situation that's connected, there is a spot for bikes. So you don't have to worry too much about getting on the wrong door. There are also decals on the outside that will show where the bike hanging stations are. So that's the top left picture there, is one of the areas that bikes can be put. If you have an acoustic bike or just a lighter bike in general, you can hang it up. But if you have an e-bike, those are not designed, these hanging hooks, that's the word, are not designed to hold something that heavy. So you do not want to hang it on there. But in the picture, if I was to go to the left, there's an area with seats that you can pull up or down. So often you'll just pull up the seats and stand there with your bikes. The turn bikes all have the capacity to be pulled up and onto their back rack, as you see in that bottom left picture. And that's a really great option when you're on the light rail, just to keep your bike a little bit more out of the way. Do make sure to stand by your bike. Do stay by your bike. Just to keep other passengers safe. But then when you're exiting the bike, exiting the train, same deal. Just take it down, roll it off. And I've been on very packed light rail cars, and people are always very considerate, and they give you space so that you can roll it off. Especially if you're coming from this far north, going either way, you won't have to worry so much about the trains being super packed. Let's go back one, actually. Two more things I want to mention is that there's more videos about this and information about your bikes on the light rail at soundtransit.org. Very great information for it. And another thing when we're talking transit, for buses specifically, all King County buses have bike racks on the front, and those are not designed for e-bikes. They're only designed for acoustic bikes because of the weight limit. And if you notice, this e-bike is quite long, and it is not designed for such a long bike. So e-bikes cannot go on public buses, but acoustic bikes can. Any questions about taking it on and off specifically before we talk about locking? Great.
Well, there was one question online. Do folding e-bikes work on public buses?
Ooh, that's a good one. If you're using it as general luggage and taking it inside with you, the same way as if you're going to the airport, what have you, then yes. But of course, that wouldn't fit on any sort of rack. So just making sure that you can take it inside with you. Good question. So locking your bike at the station. In general, so I'm going to point out some features here. A lot of e-bikes, not all, but many, come with what's called a cafe lock. That's right here. Pardon me. that's right here by the back wheel. And it locks through that back wheel, which is so nice, say, if you're just running in to literally grab something from a cafe. You don't want to lock it all the way up, but you should always lock it. If you're locking your bike for a longer duration, it's recommended that you get both the front wheel and the frame locked through some sort of bike parking lock area. So I would use this cord to go through that front wheel, as well as a U-lock and that cafe lock. Whenever I'm riding anywhere with an e-bike and leaving it, I would use all three. Also, that said, if I'm going to be, say, using the light rail every day for work and leaving it consistently out from 8 to 5, I would want a different option, just because you don't want this locked up publicly somewhere predictably every single day. That's where something like these, the Bike Link bike lockers come in super handy. This is a picture that I took right from 148th, the Link light rail. And I think it is at every light rail station that there are these bike lockers. And they're so lovely. Essentially, you just get a card from online that's a prepaid card or auto-filled. You rent a locker by the hour. It's 5 cents an hour. You're refunded for the time you don't use. And you just keep the bike in that locker until you come back. So more information about that is available at bikelink.org, but that's another really great option. Last thing I wanted to mention is bikeindex.org. In the terrible case, if your bike gets stolen, a great way to retrieve it is through bikeindex.org, which you need to do before your bike is stolen. So you just take pictures of your bike, you register it online so you can get it back easier. I just wanted to mention that. So any questions about locking or using the light rail?
Is there any kind of identifying serial number or anything like that? You were talking about the bike index.
That is a good question. I have not actually registered my bike on Bike Index.
Oops.
I know, I need to. I'm getting some nods that there are. Oh, great. So yes. Any other questions about the light rail or locking up your bike? Any online questions?
The top boxes have platforms that come down. So you
Thank
don't
you
have
for
to lift
mentioning
your
that.
bike up.
Yeah, don't have to go to weightlifting classes just to get it up there. Great, thank you.
There was one online question which you may or may not know. Could you use bikeindex.org to make sure that a used bike is not stolen?
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
good question. Perfect. So now we're going to move on to my favorite section, which is safe riding techniques for the trail, the street, the road. So first we'll talk about general road riding guidelines. Then we'll discuss where to ride, the street, the bike lane, the sidewalk, who knows, and scenarios, and then signals for passing, lane changing, how to do that effectively. You ready? Oh, wait, let's go back one. Sorry. Who has their driver's license? Great, perfect. So you already know all the rules for riding in the road. All of the rules for general, it's called vehicular cycling when you're riding in the general roadway, are the same for when you're on your bike as when you're driving. As we talk through the rest of this, the more that you think of it as you're driving, the easier this is going to be. So the more you're in that mindset, the simpler it is. One of the only differences, we'll have you go forward. Great. One of the only differences, and this is changed within the past couple of years, is that if you're on a four-way stop or you come to a stop sign, before this law was changed, as a bike rider, to have an official stop, you had to stop all the way with both feet flat on the ground before you went on. Now it is come to a pause, look, continue, but you do not need both feet flat on the ground. And that is essentially to speed up your traffic, get you out of an intersection. But all the rest of the rules are indeed basically the same. So let's go on. Including sidewalks. Well, so let's talk about sidewalks. We mentioned vehicular cycling. Bikes are interesting in the way that you can use them as a driver would in the general roadway, but you can often act as a pedestrian in the way that you ride over crosswalks and that you can use sidewalks. The big thing to consider is that sidewalks are designed for people who are going walking speed. So if you're prepared to ride about like this, then it can be a safe option. I would not recommend going any faster. So oftentimes there are better ways to get somewhere than going that speed because there's all these obstacles in a sidewalk. There's a lot of driveways, there's shops, etc. So sometimes it can be, as you in the back mentioned, sometimes it does feel like the safest option, and then that is an option. But it should kind of be on your last resort option. Something to mention about e-bikes specifically with that as well is that it is an option for class 1 and 2 e-bikes. All of the turn e-bikes are class 1 and 2. If you have a class 3 e-bike, you are technically not allowed on sidewalks and you are not allowed on multi-use trails. That being said, if you're treating everything responsibly, you're looking out for those around you, you're going walking speed, I would not personally worry too much about it. But the classes are all changing, so the goal is to be responsible when you're riding your bikes. Does that answer the sidewalk question? Cool, great.
How do I know if I have a class 3 e-bike?
Ooh, you're asking the good questions, Vicky. So when you purchase your e-bike, or you're able to look up the make and model, it will be listed online or on your owner's manual what you have. There is a difference on max speeds, which is partially why class 3 e-bikes are not allowed, because they can go a higher max speed or max assist speed than other bikes. Nope.
What type of bikes are we getting in the pedal forward shoreline program?
Just class 1. Just class 1. So if you're getting a turn bike, you do not have to worry about this. Great, so moving on. As we're talking, so for the rest of the presentation, I'm just going to talk about vehicular cycling, which is biking in the general roadway or in the bike lane, as these are the techniques we're using. So if we're thinking about being a driver, being in the general roadway, of course, we always have to stop at crosswalks. We yield to pedestrians because we are the fast-moving object. Next. We go counterclockwise around roundabouts. This is a really important one that I don't think people understand the impact of. I've personally seen probably a half dozen to a dozen near collisions because either a driver or a cyclist cut the corner when they're going left and almost hit another roadway user head on. So take the time, go the correct way around a roundabout, please. So this is a general overview that we give to all riders who are doing our events or free group rides. And I'm just going to point out a couple key elements of this because this is an acronym that we use to just make sure that we're keeping in mind techniques to stay safe. The first one is just staying alert. I use that to remember or to tell people that the biggest way I know that drivers are coming up behind me generally is hearing them. And if you're hearing anything else happening in the roadway, that's why, especially when you're commuting, I don't recommend wearing any sort of headphones because the more information you get from those around you, the better. Maintaining space is a huge one. I think we've all been in a situation where we see a driver ahead of us that doesn't quite know what they're doing. Like you can tell they're moving a little bit slow, going a little bit back and forth. So you just give them a little space to figure that out. Do the same when you're in a bike. Give space for people to make mistakes in front of you. If you're on a multi-use trail, give a lot of space when you're passing, slow down for slow users like children, etc. Just give space. And I want to mention with this that one thing that I think about a lot is that when you're riding a bike, drivers especially are scanning, they're looking out for you, but you are a small, fast object that is easily missed. So I always assume that people cannot see me when I'm on my bike and act accordingly. So make sure, and we'll get into this, but make sure that people see you when you're crossing the roadway. Make sure that you're getting confirmation if you're passing anybody. Just make sure that people see you, assume that they can't. And not out of any malicious thing on their side, but you're small and you're fast. So just make sure they can see you. Acting safely and predictably. As Vicky brought up, and as we mentioned before, you might be in situations that don't feel very comfortable and you want to pull off. Just give yourself time, act predictably, do it slowly. As I had just mentioned about a driver in front of you that doesn't know what they're doing, it's much better if they slowly make a decision and turn versus whipping a UE and startling people. So just act slowly and predictably. We mentioned the rules of the road. Great. And just think ahead and talk to those around you. Perfect. This is a big one. Even if a street has a bike lane or other bike infrastructure, you do not legally need to ride in the bike lane, which is surprising to a lot of folks. But the big reason is you need to ride as far to the right as is safe and practical, and the bike lane is not always the safest or most practical place for you to be. And I'm going to show you some examples. First I have a little pop quiz. So I have two different pictures here of two riders or groups of riders. On the left picture, you see that the riders pretend they're a little bit farther away from that car so they wouldn't get doored. But you have that picture on the left where they're closer to the right, and the picture on the right where they're in the middle of that lane. Which is a safer place to be? Do we have any guesses?
The middle?
Let's see. That's a good guess. Any other thoughts?
It depends.
It depends. Tell me more.
Well, on the right, controlling the lane there is good because no one can feasibly pass them, right? They're not really in the way of anyone. But on the picture on the left, someone could pass, right? And so it does make sense to like move over to the right so that you're not totally taking the lane.
Yes. Give us just a second.
Far to the right.
Far to the right. Okay. It is kind of a trick question because they are different photos and they're different situations. So you both were also right. In these scenarios, I think they're in the perfect places. So in the picture far to the left, you see that there's no traffic. The roads are very wide. There is space for people to pass them safely. So it's totally okay that they're far to the right. In the right picture, there are parked cars. There's a lot of heavy traffic. That does not seem like a situation that if I was riding in there, I would not feel safe with someone passing me. So I show that by being in the middle of the road. I'm not comfortable with anyone passing me. I'm going to be right in the middle. But when I am comfortable, I'll be off to the right side. I think that often folks assume that they're being kind to those around them by staying to the far right as much as possible, out of the way, but you're showing people that you're comfortable with them passing, even if that doesn't feel good to you and is not a good situation to them. So the kindest thing you can do is be very clear.
Yes, with the high number of cars that are parked there, you never know when somebody's going to open their door on you too if you're too far to the right.
You got it. You got it?
Gotta be more traffic to the right side. And then reason we using the bicycle because it reduces the, the air pollution, right? But in case more traffic, so more bad gas comes out, There's no purpose to riding like this and probably using the sidewalk or something like that. So it's really dangerous.
So you mentioned that there's more traffic, and so when you're riding a bike, then you're taking yourself out of using a car, and you're kind of taking yourself out of the traffic equation. Is that kind of what you're saying? Okay, yeah. The more people that are on bikes, the less people that are in vehicles, and the easier traffic becomes for everyone is the goal. That's the whole hope. So thank you. Let's move on. As you mentioned, this is a very important thing to look at. This is the door zone. So you'll see that a lot more bike lanes are not being designed in this way, right by parked cars. That's why you'll often see parked cars now on the opposite side of the bike lane, because right now how that's designed is you're in the door zone when you're still in the bike lane. So that's a reason why you might want to be not in the bike lane. So say if I was taking this uphill, I'm going super slow. Maybe there's not a lot of people parked there. I'm fine being in the bike lane. But if I'm going fast or there's a lot of people parked, that's why I would move into the general traffic lane. Does that make sense? Perfect. Next one. Another reason why we might not want to be in the bike lane is there might be debris, such as broken glass, potholes, especially when it's wet. We want to stay away from riding over anything metal because it can be very slippery. Another thing is this merging traffic. And I want you to think about, if you're riding in that bike lane, how long that driver has to see you before they merge, versus if you're in the general traffic lane, how much time they have to see you. And drivers generally, of course, out of habit, drivers are, of course, oftentimes more looking at the general traffic lane than they are right beside them. And think even if I was riding on the sidewalk in this scenario, the driver would not be looking at a sidewalk for someone to be going 25 miles an hour. Does that make sense? Okay. Just wanted to mention this as we're talking about wet metal being slippery, especially when it rains. Whenever we're crossing railroad tracks or light rail tracks or any sort of tracks, always cross them, perpendicular, so at a 90-degree angle. One of the only falls I've had was when I was crossing about like yay, and it was wet out. I was just embarrassed, it was just an ego thing, but always remember to cross exactly perpendicular, and a lot more bike lanes are being designed in that way to cross exactly at a 90, but just keep that in mind. Perfect, right hand signal time. So I'd like everyone to just practice with me. This is a left turn signal. For a right, you can either go straight up or out. And stopping is down. So an important thing to know about signals is that they are not required. It is a great way to give information to those around you, but if you need to keep your hands on the handlebars, either because of your balance or you're going down a hill or any reason, keep your hands on the handlebars. That is the most important thing to do in that scenario. Communicating with others, super helpful, but it's better for you to stay safe. Another way that you can communicate with those around you when you're riding, if you can't take your hands off your handlebars, actually, this will be a question. How can you communicate with others if you can't use your turn signals to communicate with others around you what you're planning on doing? Your legs, just this side. That's a good one. I'll have to try that next.
By saying on your left or on your right?
Great, just using your voice and saying on your left, on your right, great. Any others? Eye contact is a great way to communicate, great.
A bell.
A bell, wonderful. So there's all these other methods to communicate, and even if you're doing this, looking around, if I was a driver, or I've had this with drivers behind me, they see that I'm looking around, They see that I'm planning something. They don't know what, but I'm planning something. So using your voice, using your hand signals, being clear. And there have been times that, not all drivers remember what these are, and that's okay. You are doing something though, and they know that you're doing something. So then they're just paying attention to something is happening. I want to use this to talk to, let's have another question.
I have a question about basic traffic laws if bicyclists have to obey the traffic laws. I have been in downtown Seattle in a car and bicyclists cut the line, so to speak, when there's 5 lanes of traffic stopped at a red light and they pull up, nothing's coming, they go through, they're ignoring the lights. I've seen it a lot. Is that against the law?
That's absolutely against the law.
And for them to ride in and try to create another lane, is that also? I've seen them, if they're not against the curb, I've seen them they're like 2 or 3 lanes over coming between.
That's a tricky situation. I don't actually know legally. What I will say about that though is, having been in that situation, generally you want, if you're in a multi-lane situation as a bike rider, you want to be in the far right lane. But in that scenario, when I have gotten kind of trapped in this lane that I don't want to be, and you'll see examples of this later, but sometimes in the front there are spaces specifically for a bicyclist to wait up front because that is the more visible place for you to be. So there have been times when I've done that as well, just to be out and visible so that other drivers can see me. But it is also about being considerate. And that is definitely, as far as running a red light, absolutely not. Like, that is not the legal thing that you should be doing. I understand why, especially to get out of that scenario. And there have been times too when it's been heavy traffic and stopped, and I've said, I actually don't like this. Looked around, make sure people can see me. I take my bike up on the sidewalk then to just get out of that. You had thoughts in the back? Okay, never mind. This is a lot of information and I have some more, but I want to pause for questions so far.
What about turning left?
Ooh, we're going to get there.
Okay.
When we're adjusting our bike, how about if the handlebars are too long? How are we going to adjust that?
So we'll talk more later, but essentially, depending on the style of bike, some of these are adjustable in that you can bring them back and forth, or there are specific parts that you can buy that are pretty easy to change out that can make your handlebars come farther back or forth or even higher or lower. So it's either the part can do it itself or you buy a different part for it. That's a good question. So let's go to the next one. Oh yes, so we're going to talk about passing people or changing lanes. So I want you to think about this again as a driver would. So if I'm going to change a lane, I'm pretending to be a driver here. I'm passing someone that's going slow. What's the first thing that you do if you're going to change a lane as a driver? Say again? Oh, you verbalize it? Oh yeah. Well, so if you're driving, the first thing that you do is you look behind you. You use your rearview mirror. So same thing when you're biking. First thing you do is look behind. Then you signal, turn signal or arm. I'm going to go out here. And that's someone I mentioned eye contact before too. It's the same thing, drivers and bikers. You look, you make sure you either have space or that you've made eye contact with the person saying, hey, I want to come out here. Great, great, great. Then you go out. Then when you're passing someone on a bike, you just let them know that you're passing. Hey, I'm on your left, just so you don't spook them, so that they know someone's there and you're also giving them plenty of space. And then when you come back into that lane, you do the same thing again. So looking back, they have space, signaling, I'm coming in. I bring this up specifically too because, especially in multi-use trails, if you're passing people who are walking or anyone else who might be going slower than you are, give them a ton of space, let them know you're passing. And the key thing is that first step, look behind you. Because I've seen a lot of near collisions because someone wasn't saying that they're coming up behind, another person went to turn or pass, and they just run into each other. So this can be prevented if you're looking behind you. Does that make sense with the passing? And I just want to show you once more time, but question first.
What I see in Green Lake is like there is a small group of people, 3, 4, 5, and the bikers. And those 3, 4 people are chatting or, enjoying their walk. And then they just back and forth into the lanes, and that can cause some, how we can approach that when you're biking and then all of a sudden they move, even though you mentioned that you're going in.
So that's where your voice comes in handy, or your bell. And it's totally responsible and respectable to say, hey, I'm behind you, or on your left, etc. Just letting them know what's going on. Same way if you're a driver, if someone was swerving, you get a little toot toot. Let them know that you need to pass. Yeah, but just letting them know and giving them space until they move over. Because again, with the multi-use trails, you just got to give space until someone moves over, but it's still courteous to say, hey, I'm back here on your left. Doing good so far? Some people definitely do use a bell when they want to alert people. I generally like using, I think bells are appropriate if someone absolutely cannot hear you, if they have headphones in, if they're chatting. I personally have a hard time knowing where bells are coming from. I cannot auditorially process if they're in front of me, behind, etc. So I like using a bell and my voice. And my voice is a first option. If they can't hear, then it's bell time. But everyone does a little differently. But I like voice because it gives you more information of on your left versus someone is here. So you talked about left turns. We've left turns? That's right. So you have a lot of options as a bike rider, and I just want to walk you through some of them. So if I was taking option A, the same option that I'd use if I was driving, which is, I need to turn left coming up. So if I'm in the far right lane, I see that I need to turn left. So far before I'm actually turning, I need to get in the far left lane. So I'm riding, I look back, see if I have space to go in, signal that I want to go in. Then I merge into that lane, and you see that line is positioned in the center left of that lane. And that is so people don't pass you. You're showing them that you do not want to be passed when you're going through this intersection. You're taking up your space, and you make that left turn, just like you would if you're driving. Another option that you have is option B, in which, and I've definitely had this before, of I intended to get into that left lane. There was not space or it's too fast. So I just kept going straight. Then you pull off and make a little loop, and that's where you might be sitting there in front of traffic. That's totally okay. And you'll see on the next slide in a bit that sometimes there is a specific green box for you to wait in. Even if there is not, that's an okay place for you to be. Yeah, it's called a bike box out at front. And like I'd mentioned earlier, getting out in front of traffic, that's often the safest place for you to be. Can you go back one slide? Great. There is another option if I want to turn left when I'm riding, and I'd like someone to tell me what it is.
The crosswalk.
The crosswalk, perfect. Can you tell me more?
Just makes sense.
Like no explanation needed.
That is, yeah, I mean, because that is something that a pedestrian would use or something anyway, and people are more aware of someone in a crosswalk.
Great. Yeah, a crosswalk is a perfect place, and you can either bike or walk through a crosswalk with your bike, but it's a great option if this is too heavy of a traffic scenario, what I can always do is when I get to that crosswalk, say if it's turned green, I pull off to the side. I wait till I get an official cross, whatever you want to do. But that is a totally fine option to get you where you need to go. Good, thank you. And next one. Oh, one more. Perfect. So, I didn't format this correctly. It should say right hook. In this scenario, you see that the driver is making a right-hand turn and there is a potential for a collision there. How could you avoid this? This is kind of a pop quiz time.
Some of the high occupancy or high volume streets, they've added a light now where it's for bikes only to go off first. And this can give them a chance to get out. Even the pedestrian crossings, they give them a 2-second head start to get it out into the walkway before the cars start turning on them.
Perfect. So that's a really great example of infrastructure and design. Really mitigates our potential collisions. That design will keep you a little bit safer on your streets. So we could have a light there telling us when bikes can go first. What are some other options as a bike rider, especially if you don't have that option?
I always use the mirror. What, more? What, no, when I'm stopped and before I'm gonna go through the intersection, I'll check the mirror and see if there's anybody turning. I can see their turn signals. Of course, if they don't signal, then I'm in trouble.
So you're using your mirror and you're looking over your shoulder to check if anyone has their turn signal on, going right.
You can just hang back and wait till any car that looks like it's going to be taking a right turn does it.
Great.
Then go yourself.
Yeah, you can hang back and just make sure that sometimes I'll be riding through. Before I'm riding through, I'll lock eyes with a driver to my left. They see me, I see them. I stay with them through the intersection. So that's a great idea. Any other thoughts?
Similar answers. I will stop and give priority for the car because safety is first.
That's an option. That's an option of giving, just waiting to see what they do, making sure they go through. Yeah, depending on how high traffic is, that's an option. Sometimes the traffic might be too high that you don't have that chance, or you could come off instead to what we were talking before about using the crosswalk instead, if that feels like too much. Any other thoughts? So all these ideas, one that I want to throw out there is this is a perfectly acceptable time to get out of the bike lane and go into the general traffic lane. So even before you're in the scenario, so say I'm at the bottom of this picture, I know that I want to go straight. I'm worried about people turning right. So I look behind me, I get into the general traffic lane to go straight. No one can turn into me. They all see me there. Does that make sense? They might honk, and that's okay. They see you, and that's the important thing. And that's something I want to hone on too is you're doing the kind thing by making sure everyone can see you. No one wants to be in an incident. No one wants to be surprised by a bike rider. So making sure you are seen and visible is the safest thing you can do, not only for you, but for everyone around you. So there may be different situations that either we get in the general traffic or go off to the sidewalk. Those are all options. So feel free to use them because it can be the safest and you do have the legal right to do so. That was a lot of information, especially about the bike riding or the bike safety portion. Before I totally end the bike handling and safety on the roadway portion, what other questions do we have about that? Because that's a lot of info. And this is all information that we're also going to be practicing on the bikes for people who are doing the Pedal Forward program. We'll get a chance to hopefully go out in the general roadway and practice this, as well as physically practice some of the techniques that we would use. But what other questions?
What's the max speed on those?
I think on the class ones, they assist you up to 20 miles an hour. You can get faster than that, but then the assist cuts out.
If you're going through a crosswalk, you're going with the pedestrians, do you have to get off your bike?
I'm not sure in different like counties and states, but here in Seattle, and correct me if I'm wrong, but here in Seattle, you do not have to. But again, I would go walking speed and staying out, making sure you're giving space, etc. Do you have a question?
Yeah, here in Washington, the pedestrian has always the right of way. What about bikes against cars? The pedestrians always have the right of way. It doesn't matter lights on, lights stop, whatever, the pedestrian has the right of way, no matter what. What is the standing between the bikes and the cars?
So pedestrians have right of way. What about bikes and cars? If you're acting as a vehicular cyclist, so in the general roadway, they are treated equally. And just a personal thought here, that can get confusing because I think so say you're at a four-way stop. I've often encountered it that I come pedaling up after someone has already stopped. And legally what they should do is, you stop first, you go first. That is what should happen. But oftentimes drivers are trying to be nice and they're like, oh no, you go. And that is frustrating because then it's confusing for everyone involved. So the more you can act like a driver, follow the same driver rules, the better. But they're absolutely treated equally.
We have some questions online. Maybe we could do those first. One of our attendees wants to know how to maintain and charge the e-bike, an e-bike.
Good question. So let me go over first what we've finished up and then we'll move to general questions. So just as a reminder, what we all went through right now, we talked over fitting a bike and helmet. We talked over the big differences in handling between e-bikes and acoustic bikes. We talked about what bike infrastructure looks like and how to plan a route and how to use it on the light rail, and then all of our bike handling. So that's a lot of information. And don't feel bad if you got a portion of it. As you keep riding, this will make more and more sense, especially on your e-bikes. And as you get it into the physicality of it and try it out, it will make more sense. This is just our first introduction to it. So what was the question again?
How can you maintain and charge an e-bike?
Charging is fairly simple, and it depends on the model of e-bike. With all of our turn bikes, I believe you can hook up the charging cable to the battery directly, either by keeping it in the bike or taking the battery out. And then it's just something you can plug into your wall. And as far as maintenance, a lot of maintenance looks similar to an acoustic bike, and a lot of the big things that you can do, such as maintaining your chain, are easy things to do on your e-bike. I will mention if you're getting a new e-bike or acoustic bike, most places that you get it from new offer a free tune-up after a year. Make use of that. That is super helpful because it is a new thing, like things are kind of shifting around. And so you might notice, especially your shifting or your braking starts to get a little weird after you've ridden it for 6 months to a year. So plan on getting it maintained. And the best thing you can do, especially with an e-bike, because there are some more electrical components, is schedule regular maintenance so that you don't have something all of a sudden break, that they can check before it becomes an issue.
Thanks. We had some questions about keeping the bike safe, like when you go shopping or go to do your grocery run. Do you have anything to add other than just using the 3 different kinds of locks to make sure that it's safe when you're doing your errands?
Not really. Just make sure it's not predictably out. I wanted to mention as well, make sure you have somewhere to store this, especially an e-bike, inside at nighttime. This isn't pertaining to shopping specifically, but Storing it inside, and especially in a home or in a secured area, is the best place. I would not leave it out overnight consistently in the same area. And same kind of with, yeah, just don't be predictable about where you're locking it up. But I would use multiple locks, making sure you're locking the frame, both wheels, etc.
Amy, I think I'd add to the answer the question about locking at the grocery store. Not all bike racks are equal. And so there are some that are secured to the ground with hard to remove nuts, and some are just sitting there. So depending upon your length of stay, choose a bike rack that is more secured and more sturdy.
Good addition. Thank you.
Thanks. One more question. When you're riding on the road or on a multi-use trail, how is there some like common courtesies or rules around sharing with like faster or slower bikes and scooters?
Ooh, good question. So I think the big common courtesy things are making sure you give people space when you're passing. And as far as faster, slower bikes, thinking about it in the same way as if you're driving of, hey, if someone is coming up faster behind me, it's not my job to move over. I just remain predictable in what I'm doing, and it's their job to pass safely. So you don't have to act differently because someone else is coming. Just act predictably, go on your way. I will say this is a common courtesy thing of if you're coming to a stop sign or stoplight and there's a bunch of bikes coming up, wait your turn, wait in line. So if I'm getting off the camera here, but if there's someone in front of me waiting for the light to turn, I wait behind them. I've definitely had people pull up in front of me or to the side of me, so it makes it hard for people to pass. Just think about the flow of traffic and wait behind. That's kind of the biggest common courtesy besides leaving space.
One more question is, if you have limited driving experience, what are some suggestions you have for being safe on the road with an e-bike or an acoustic bike?
I think this goes back to especially be predictable in the way that you're riding. And it's okay if you're not a driver or if you don't have a driving license, but generally we know kind of the rules of the road and follow the general rules of the road and act predictably. Don't go faster than what you can handle, etc.
I would also add start in low stress environments. So start in the side road before you get into busy road.
Yeah, great.
That's all the questions online for now.
Perfect. Any other questions here?
I'd just like to say that taking a class like this, we all learn the rules of the road, but we can stick right to the rules of the road. That doesn't mean the car next to us is. They, a lot of times they think bikes are a real pain, get in the way, slow them down, and they'll get mad at you, and yield to them. It's not just it's not just being polite. It's like you yield to the heavier vehicle, or else you're going to get slammed.
That is, you can only control so much when you're riding. That's absolutely true. And I've been biking here in Seattle since 2012. A lot downtown, and the number of drivers who are actively mad at me, maybe two or three, but it's been my main source of transportation for that whole time. So the majority of drivers either just don't know that you'd like more space or XYZ, they're distracted. But when you're showing them with these techniques of what you want them to do, such as taking your space, etc., the majority of people are totally fine and give you the space you need and are happy that you are out of their way as far as one less driver on the road. On occasion, and you're going to get this no matter what mode of transport you have, there are jerks on every mode of transport. But thankfully with these techniques, it lessens the amount of scary situations you could get in. So I want to talk about timeline a little bit, and then we'll formally end our time here, but I'm going to stick around for more questions if you have more questions after it. Thank you for participating and giving all these questions. It's really great to have this back and forth and see what's still on your mind. So thinking about the timeline for moving forward, The initial bike recipients for the pedal forward. So this is specifically about pedal forward if you're involved in that program. The initial bike recipients have been contacted already. Please respond to that email about that you can still attend the class, et cetera, et cetera. The on-bike classes are going to be May 7 to June 7. So just one date within there. That should be in your email as well. There may be additional bike recipients. This depends on our availability to get bikes. This depends on if any people drop out that were already selected, et cetera. And they will be notified beginning of, or May to beginning of June. And then the bikes are going to be distributed end of June. And more information coming on that about specifics, but that's the general timeline that I wanted to go through. And we already kind of went through questions, so thank you so much for taking the time today. I'm going to stick around, answer any questions personally. I'll just be up here, but this is formally the end. So thank you so much for taking the time again, and looking forward to either seeing you in a class or we have other classes at Cascade, other free group rides, etc. So thank you.